Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1971's The Telephone Book. This is put out by Vinegar Syndrome. Never heard of this movie before until I was surfing Vinegar Syndrome's website and got it on their Black Friday sale. This is The Telephone Book. Here's the back right here, DVD and Blu-ray inside of here, and the copyright is 1971. Here it is. Wow! This has easily become one of my favorite movies, folks, my favorite discoveries. The Telephone Book tells the story of the love relationship of a very non-shocked, kind of vulnerable, yet dirty girl. The love relationship between her and her obscene caller. The film also deals with sexuality, the sexual underbelly in New York City in 1971, since it was filmed in New York City. And it also deals with characters and people and space. And it deals with tits and cunts and dirty books and pig faces and sexual obscene phone call romance and pornographic wallpaper and change belts and dirty stories and non-stop erections that cause divorce, and shoving bananas inside of your vagina, and people with tongue heads and massive vagina butts. I just gave you some imagery, folks. This is The Telephone Book. Let's get into this movie right here. This movie utilizes black and white, and then also at the right moment color. It also utilizes color animation at the right moment as well. And this movie has so much style, so much immense style. Every frame of this film is style. This is very avant-garde, very experimental, very boundary breaking, playing by its own rules, most definitely. This is a movie that has its own rule book for filmmaking. Sometimes it seems like a documentary, sometimes it seems experimental, sometimes it has the sexploitation, sometimes dark comedy, sometimes dramatic. It has it all. And the movie it utilizes very stark angles and circular motion at times, and some effects, and interesting editing where things cut back and forth quickly at times. As a character is speaking and you're cutting to something else that happened in the past, and there is editing that is abrupt and kind of bringing a sense of timelessness to everything. Things are very weird in this movie. You are entering into a very bizarre world, yet you are with the main character, this girl here, and she has a level of vulnerability and fun and excitement, and her mouth is wide open, ready to devour the dirtiest of sexual stories or books or literature, although she lives alone. A mass in her pornographic wallpaper. She has this yearning for the dirty, yet she's extremely innocent, and that's what makes her so lovable. And she sounds so young and soft, and yet she's not shocked by this wild world of sexuality. There is there are surreal elements to this film, and the editing and the way the film is shot, and even the dialogue brings it brings a surreal quality to the film. And this is a very, very hard film to pin down, but it's definitely art house, experimental, sexploitation, comedy, drama, all of the above. All of the above. The soundtrack for this film is very interesting because it utilizes what sounds like 20s, 30s old music that you would have heard in The Shining, mixed with some kind of orchestrated dramatic type music, which is very off kilter with what is happening on the screen at various times. Um, I will also say that I didn't notice a lot of music throughout the film. And it's just me not noticing it that's interesting to me because I feel like you were getting a lot of natural sound in the film. And I also feel like there were also moments of silence, just silence in the movie, which was very, very interesting. This movie utilizes interesting montages of body parts and body positions, vagina positions and butts and nipple positions. And this film utilizes um, cutting away from the story of the film and then into and then back to the film, and the film itself definitely breaks the third wall in different regards. I mean, not totally maybe, because it's not saying that it's a film or coming out of it, but it definitely comes out of the film and becomes a documentary at times, almost reminding me at times of like the Schoolgirl Report series where they interview people on the street amidst the wraparound story and amidst the stories of the film. You know, that kind of idea. And the dialogue at times is bleeped, and then at other times it is not, and you know it's not. Very, very sexually explicit dialogue in this film. We do have full nudity in the film. I do not recall any penises, but definitely from women, frontal and back, and and pictures around like on the wallpaper and things like that, and a massive orgy scene. But we're really looking at a film that is very sexually explicit in tone, in dialogue, and in concept. There is also an animated sequence in this film that is very surreal. It's a representation, very symbolic of what is happening amidst two characters in the film, one with a pig mask on. All through the night through two separate telephone booths. But the animation in this film is very sexually explicit and hard, with oral sex and intercourse and shoving other things up there and everything. And it's surreal at the same time. It almost reminds me a little bit of David Lynch's animation mixed with Ralph Bakshi. So there's definitely some interesting elements to that, and the mix of the contrast in the film of the black and white, but it's a very stark black and white, and it utilizes light and shadows very well, predominantly in the steps leading up to the main girl Alice's apartment. So very, very almost haunting at times and eerie. um, the voices of the two main characters in this film, the main girl Alice, who's here, and the obscene phone caller, they both have very stark voices that carry this film, that are so interesting and intriguing. You'll be so intrigued by the obscene caller. You'll be so intrigued by the dialogue. You might laugh out loud. You might be in total shock. You might have to rewind it again, just, or pause the movie because you're just in such shock. Now, the main girl, Alice, is actually very cute, very attractive, has a definite sexual presence about her. There are some very interesting scenes in this film that would be looked at as surreal in nature because they are So weird, so bizarre, so timeless. Soaping up a girl's head in in a bathtub while listening to um, the influence of spatial space travel on the focus on nipples and the ending of marriages and the beginning of obscene phone calls. And really, this is a film about kind of the culture of obscene phone calls as well, because that is really part of the story and the stories within the story as well. And also, um, kind of the sexual perverts in the subway and um, porno filmmaking and telephone books and lesbian housewives and all it has such as weird as the cinematography and the style is. um, the characters are also extremely existing in another world. I mean, when you watch this film, I was mesmerized. I was really put into a trance by this film. There is not a second that goes by, not a frame that goes by in the telephone book that is not intriguing. Okay? There's not a frame that goes by that is not intriguing. This is the telephone book, put out by Vinegar Syndrome, 1971. What a unique film. I have never heard anything like it before, never seen anything like it before. It is definitely a film that if you are into cult exploitation, experimental sexploitation, obviously the core of this film is sexuality. And I felt that there were a lot of interesting concepts in this film as well, amidst the black humor, amidst the deviancy, and there's a lot of deep sexual philosophy, life philosophy, that is mixed into the characters and the storyline. I found it very intriguing, very interesting, and something that was not easy to walk away from. This is the Telephone Book, 1971. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like this one. Good night.